Time is running out. This is the final drive of 2025 at Capital Ford. It's your last shot of the year to grab massive dealer discounts, year-end factory incentives, and aggressive trade-in offers. Like a new 25 Ford Explorer with 0% APR for 60 months. Or 0% APR for 60 months plus no payments for 90 days on a new 25 Ford F-150. So hurry for these exceptional end-of-year offers during the final drive of 2025 at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Hey, welcome in to another live episode of the Pit Press Live. We're coming at you on Tuesday night, kind of the week before conference play starts out in the Mountain West Conference. And as you can see, we got a special guest joining us tonight, and he's got some new news kind of coming out. I think the news broke yesterday, so we'll get into that a little bit later. But before we do, let's get to tonight's panel. All the way from Albuquerque and straight off the Polar Express, colleague, the lawyer, Mr. Nick Nunez. Nick, how you doing tonight, man?
What's going on, Eric, Dad, Tom? It's great to be with you all to break down some Mountain West basketball. Great time in Durango, Colorado. Anybody who hasn't tried the Polar Express, if you got young ones, I recommend it. It's worth the money. And ready to be back and talk about some basketball.
Yep, and I don't know if he's the better half, but he's definitely the senior of the Nunez duo. Ed, Lobo fan since 1970. How you doing, man?
Well, to echo my son, we just spent some great family time together, and my granddaughter had the best night there was last night, and I know my son and I will never forget that. We were there. My wife was there, my daughter-in-law, and my daughter-in-law's mother, and our granddaughter. So we just had a great time, and to see her face light up, and when she saw Santa and the elves, and they put on a great show, man. So we had a really good time. But it's good to be back.
Well, right on. Well, we already have some comments rolling in, Ed. Steve Singletary, listener of the show, viewer. Great takes today, Ed, and enjoying listening to you on the radio on Kenny Thomas. Is it every Tuesday and Thursday that you're joining?
He's on
him?
every day.
What it is?
I'm on with
every
him
day?
Tuesday. And Kenny Thomas, the ex-Lobo, has a show in town, Unfiltered, with Kenny Thomas, and I go on with him on Tuesday and Thursday. And, Kenny, again, having played in the NBA, man, I get to ask him, how was it like to play against Karl Malone? What was it like to be a teammate with Allen Iverson, to be coached by Larry Brown, by Reggie Theus? And he's got a lot of takes, man. How is it today to play an 82-game season? Because you can't, and he mentioned, he has a lot of great takes, man. And so, anyway, I appreciate people listening, man. And the other thing is, he always promotes the Pit Press, always. And I can't thank him enough for that. He's been very gracious with us, man. Very gracious.
Yeah, I listened to it. I was able to call in, and he does always shout us out. So definitely appreciate that. And finally, at last but not least, the guest for this evening, Mr. Coach Tom Moser. Coach, we appreciate you jumping on the Pit Press Live at such short notice. I reached out to you this morning, but how you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thanks for having me on. It's always good to be with you guys, Eric, Ed, and Nick. Happy holidays to all of you. Sounds like you guys had some fun up there, and that's great. Always good to mix in some family fun around the hoops here. So, yeah, as you mentioned, we're ready to get into the thick of conference play in about, I guess, 4 days now. Technically, we have a game tomorrow, but really heats up on Saturday. So I'm excited.
Yeah, well, we will jump right into conference play. I do want to talk about non-conference play because there are some pretty solid resumes around the league. But before we jump into a lot of that, I know that you have some news that came out yesterday. You're going to be joining BJ Rains on, I don't want to steal your thunder or mess anything up, so I'll kind of let you announce it on our show. But what are the details of you partnering up with BJ Rain and Bronco Nation News?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So look at it like this. You guys do a great job with your content, but I would say 95+% of your base is Lobo fan, right? Same with BJ. BJ does a great job pushing his content out on Bronco Nation News, but it's 95% plus Bronco fans, right? So BJ had the idea to just kind of create like a conference-wide thing. And I have been doing one of those a week with Steve Ivey, a CSU fan, and I have my pod. But, that Field of 68 website, they do a nightly show that kind of covers the Power 4 conferences, and they don't really touch on the Mountain West a lot. So BJ's idea was to kind of spread out his content and get it conference-wide. And he reached out to me, and I thought it was a good match to get my audience spread out a little bit more. And so we're going to come on every single night that there's a game night. So even if there's just one game like tomorrow, obviously on Saturday when there's 5 or 6, we're going to come on probably a few minutes after the last game ends. I'll go on. Sometimes BJ will be with me. Sometimes he won't be. BJ has done a lot of heavy lifting in the last few days contacting schools. I'm not going to go through each one individually to see if they would be willing to have some coaches and or players come on after games. I will say that New Mexico has agreed. They thought it was a great idea, so we'll be getting Coach Olin and players on after wins, which will be fantastic. So and we have several other schools that have already agreed to do that. So not sure how totally long the shows will go, but it'll be enough for, like you guys here, comments, feedback, discussion, question, answer, and talking about the conference as a whole. So if you need extra content and stuff to watch, tune in at night, the next morning, whenever you want. And as for the name, every time we watch hoops, just like that Boise game the other night, you're bound to see something new. And what do we always say? Like, it's just another night in the Mountain West. So BJ came up with a clever name, Another Night in the Mountain West. And so we're going to run with that. And so tomorrow night is a debut. It's on YouTube. I have the link in my profile on Twitter. Of course, BJ and I will be tweeting out to promote it as we get closer during the day tomorrow and all of that stuff. So you can go to YouTube and subscribe to the channel. Like I said, the link's in my bio. And, hopefully it's I'm excited. Looking forward to it. A lot of passionate fans in the conference, as you know. And so I think it's going to do really well.
Well, congrats again, man. That's exciting news, and you've put in a lot of time and effort. And a lot of people don't know this, but you watched the Mountain West all the way from the East Coast, so you got a long night. So, yeah. And I know that you got little kids too. So, looking forward to the content. It's exciting, and I think people want more Mountain West and program exclusivity. So, yeah. I'm going to jump right into it, Tom. I want to obviously focus on UNM, but we'll roll it out and talk about kind of expectations or early season expectations for some of the teams around the Mountain West, but focusing on the Lobos for now, coming into the season, right, brand new roster, 100% turnover. Coach Olin comes in with a lot of notoriety, did wonders at UC San Diego. What's your impression of what the Lobos have been able to accomplish early on in this season? They're sitting at 9-2 in non-conference play, some solid wins over Santa Clara, and then most recently against VCU. So what's your kind of overall analysis of the program thus far?
I think you have to be really happy if you're a Lobo fan. I'll never forget halftime of the Nebraska game. They had just come off the loss to New Mexico State. So, that's understandable. but didn't leave a good taste in the mouth of the fan base. And then the first half against Nebraska, they looked pretty bad, let's be honest. And a lot of the fans were up in arms, and the comments were rolling in. It's the worst team in X years and all that. They really turned it around in the second half. They made it a game. They didn't pull it out, but they competed hard. They made it a game. They won the next night against Mississippi State, and they've looked really good ever since. They're improving, which you expect from an Olin team. They're playing the right way. It's different guys every night. Obviously, Hall's been a revelation here as a freshman, but and Bouljon until he kind of got nicked up the other day. But they've had a lot of guys contribute, and it's just a typical Olin team where the sum of the parts are greater than the whole, and that's what you expect from his group. And I'd be excited. And I think you just look for them to continue improving as the season goes on.
I wanted to ask you about you mentioned the improvement, and great. Jeff Grammer came out with an article today about great starts in Lobo history, and Coach Olin's there, Coach Neal's there, and Coach Alford's there. Norm Ellenberger was actually 10-0 in 1972 and 1973. But those guys inherited some other players.
Sure.
This is a brand new roster. Nobody came back. Nobody. And so I guess I want to, you mentioned it took a while. It looked ugly at first. I remember the first couple of games we were watching, and, we didn't see a lot. Who's the athletic big man? Who's going, Antonio Cho's been up and down. But I thought Saturday, and then that block he had late in the game against VCU was huge. But you see spots and you're like, Kenny Thompson and I talk about it all the time. You got to get 12 to 15 from him. But I thought he played pretty solid the other night, taking shots within the offense. So I think you make hit on some great points, but I want to ask you a specific question about center JT Rock. What's your opinion of him? He's coming on. Been playing very well lately. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you never want guys to get injured, but Lou Gehrig, right? I mean, he wasn't a starter until Wally Pipp got hurt. And I'm not saying Rock's going to take Bouljon's minutes or be as productive, but he's had a really good 2 weeks here. And I think it was just a matter of him needing to get game experience, maybe in the system, playing with the guys on the floor here that he's playing with now. Because, early on in the season, you can tell Olin didn't really trust them to use him for extended run. He'd be in for 2.5 minutes, and then he'd come out. Now he's starting to get confidence. Olin and the staff are starting to get confidence in him making plays out there. He's doing it on both ends of the floor. He's 7 foot tall, but I mean, look, he may not be the most athletic, but when you're 7'1", that covers up a lot of stuff. He protects the rim. He pursues and goes after and grabs rebounds, which I like, and he can finish inside. So I mean, look, he's been a pleasant surprise to me in the last 2 weeks. I think he's trending up, and that's a big reason why the team has trended up, because of guys like JT Rock.
Yeah, Coach, I had a couple questions for you. We're speaking with Coach Tom Mazur, host of Top of the Mountain West podcast and host of the newly announced show, Another Night in the Mountain West. Coach, you've been semi-critical of UNM at times on X. You've engaged with Lobo fans after games. One of the criticisms that you've had is that sometimes this team shoots too many threes from time to time. And I think against the zone defense in particular, we saw FGCU on Sunday come out in the zone on a couple possessions. And I think they get a little trigger happy sometimes. But if you could just kind of elaborate a little bit more on your biggest criticisms of the Lobos so far.
Yeah, well, you kind of mentioned it, Nick. I remember going back to the exhibitions that we didn't have video on. All you had to go on were really Jeff Grammer's reports and the box scores, and I couldn't believe the number of threes that they were firing up. Look, Jay Wright is one of the best coaches that we've had in the last 20 years in college basketball. He didn't really care about his guys' shot selection as long as they were busting their tails on the defensive end of the floor. And if you did that, he lived with whatever shots you took. I mean, most of the time, 90%. And maybe that's kind of Olin's thing here, because like Jake, for a freshman, Jake Hall, man, he's got a green light right now. He's obviously the best shooter on the team, but you don't often see freshmen have green lights like that. And there's some other guys too. Ed mentioned it. I've been critical specifically now recently of Chol, because I think Chol settles too much for three. I don't think that Chol was this prized JUCO recruit coming in here to just stand out there and be a three-point shooter. And I'd like to see him engage more in the paint, drive into the basket, on the pull-up game, crashing the glass. He has been a little more active defensively. I'm sure they're on him in practice and in film about that. But you're right. Like, it's easy to just fall into the trap of shooting three after three after three, especially if your coach isn't going to say anything about it. I'm overly critical of shot selection, and I know that's kind of not realistic to protect every single shot, but that's kind of my number one peeve with the Lobos at the moment, because I think on the other end of the floor, they're really executing and digging in and sticking to what Olin wants on the game plan. So I have no issues with them on that end of the floor at all.
And then on the defensive side, Coach, one of the things that Coach Olin has said he wants this team to improve on is rebounding. There's been some games where their defensive rebounding rate has not been good. To me, it seems like the scheme that they play, it's a lot of switching man-to-man. Sometimes they come in that matchup zone. Naturally, when you're going to switch on defense, you're going to have mismatches when the shot goes up. What does UNM need to improve on defensively, particularly rebounding the basketball?
Yeah, so that's a good point. I mean, listen, this is one of those situations then when you might have to sacrifice like transition, right? You can't send two and a half guys running the floor trying to get easy buckets on the break. You got to keep 4 guys back and rebound. If the other team's got a size advantage on you, if you're playing a zone, or as you mentioned, Nick, mismatches when you switch and you got a 6'4", let's just say a 6'4" wing against a 6'9" forward on the opposing team, you're going to give up some boards. So what you got to do is you got to send everybody to the glass instead of having Albury and Hall leak out to try and get like a free corner 3 from Hall. You just got a team rebound like that. But I do think that the adjustments that Olin and the staff have made defensively, I think he's effective with his zone. He tinkered last year a lot. I didn't see them a ton, but in the games I watched, he is very good at switching defenses. Some guys, I was one of them, are stubborn, and you just like to hammer in what you think you're good at. But look, teams figure that stuff out, and we've seen that with other teams in the conference. So I like the fact that Olin switches D. I was worried early in the season that they didn't have anybody to complement Bourgeon on the glass, but they seem to be kind of getting it now, whether it's the coaching drilling it in or they're watching film. But they're starting to team rebound better, and they're going to need that as they get into conference play here.
Yeah, I want to talk about guard play with you, Coach, because you're familiar with Dayton Albury, right? He's been in the league before, and under a Utah State system with Coach Calhoun, I think he played a little bit different of a role, averaged 17 points last year. He's averaging 12.8 points this year, 3.6 assists, I think, but he is more in that lead point guard position. I want to. What's your take on kind of his, I guess, new fitting role under Olin's offense? And I mean, he's got that burst, that blow by speed, get to the basket. He's been a little bit more assertive recently. Not a guy that's going to typically settle for the outside shot, because I think he's only putting up 1 to 2, 3 points a game, but he is being effective by attacking the rim. Now, how would you say his evolution from last year's role in the Utah State offense to transitioning to this new role within UNM's offense?
Yeah, so the thing that Albury's main bugaboo, if you're going to call it a bugaboo, is the fact that sometimes he just goes too fast, right? Like, he is so fast, like sometimes he can't slow himself down. He's out of control and it's a turnover. If you can limit that to like 1.5 times per game, like he's doing it all right. I don't know what his turnover rate is right now, but he seems to be kind of fitting in with what Olin wants offensively from him. You're right, he's not selling for jump shots because, as you said, he can make it, but he's not going to be on the scouting report for the opposing team as a shooter. Getting his teammates involved, because he can get by his defender, set somebody up. The guards control the game in college basketball, and when you get by your guy or require somebody to help, it just opens up the whole floor, and that's why Albury is such an asset for this team. And I think Olin knows that. I think it's electric when he and Tenet are out there together. But again, if you can just, and I'm not saying you don't want Albury to run, he just got to, like, sometimes he can't, he doesn't even know how fast he is, and it ends up in a turnover. But aside from that, I think he's played under control pretty well so far.
I think you make a good point about Albury. They called him the downhill driver the other night against VCU. One of the commentators called him that, And my son and I always comment on that he does do that. You know, he just comes full speed. But he takes good angles. Sometimes I'm like, okay, he's going to get stopped there, and then he'll avoid that, lay it up. I thought against Santa Clara, he played about as well as a point guard could have played that night. And yeah, he's had some turnovers, but this is a guy that makes that, offense, roll. And I think to your point about Coach Olin, I think he's picked it up where at least against Santa Clara, he drove and then kicked out when he had to, and they made good shots that night. They knocked down their shots. You mentioned team rebounding, and Nick, my son, mentions this guy, and how important are guys like Luke Hopt and Howell, Chris Howell, to team rebounding. Now they don't look like the most outstanding players. But Luke Hopt, my son mentioned, 6'8", 6'7", 215 strong. Howell is going to get some rebounds. How important are guys like that to team rebounding? And Coach Olin mentioned the offensive rebounds, or apparently they're going to hurt them somewhere down the line. They didn't get hurt against VCU or Santa Clara, but you can't keep giving up offensive rebounds like that. But how important are guys like Hopt and Howell to team rebounding?
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, neither one of those guys are going to win like an athletic contest, right? They're good athletes. They're not great athletes. But Hop, he knows how to play the game. He's got a nose for the ball. He makes the right play. I'm assuming, without having memorized it, his plus minus has been very good lately, because when he's on the floor, good things are happening for the Lobos because he's in the right position. He doesn't take plays off. How you can see how a little bit pressing. I think Olin trusts him. He came with him, played for Olin, so they know each other well. Olin trusts him. I see how a little bit pressing, because I think he knows he did make a couple threes the other day, but he's been shooting the ball poorly. Sometimes he's trying to make something happen and it's not there. But as to your point for rebounding, that's what you need from those guys, right? Those are sometimes the key thing is, guys, it's not you getting the rebound. It's your guy not getting the rebound, right? That's as important as you getting rebounds. If you're boxing a guy out who's taller, better leaper than you, and he doesn't get the rebound, you've done your job, because it's up to your teammates then to secure the rebound. So that's what some of the guys are out there to do, and guys like Haupt and Howell do it effectively.
Coach, wanted to spread it around the Mountain West a little bit. The season started out kind of rocky. Boise State has that ugly loss to Hawaii Pacific. UNLV just seems like they haven't been able to figure things out against teams from Tennessee. Nevada loses to UC Davis. But the last 2 weeks, the Mountain West has had some pretty good wins. Most recently, Boise State's win over St. Mary's, and then UNM's win against VCU last week. But just kind of your overall impressions from the Mountain West in the non-conference.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Really poor first 3 or 4 weeks, disappointing to the point where I think most people assumed it was going to be a one-bid league. Like, we would have been lucky to get 2 bids. And I just didn't like the way the teams were playing out there. We had some disappointing efforts. You're not going to play perfect every night, but there were some pretty bad results in there. But as you mentioned, the last 2 weeks, not only do we have those great wins, you mentioned the 2 wins for UNM. Boise's got 2 great wins in there. CSU beat Colorado, but we've avoided, UNLV aside, we've avoided the bad losses, and we won a lot of the toss-up games, and that's what we weren't doing earlier. So I think some of the teams, Nevada's one of them, that are just kind of figuring things out. Boise certainly, and New Mexico, as we mentioned, have figured things out. They've got some guys playing better, and as a team, they're playing better. They look better, and as you're seeing, the results are better. So sometimes it's about the process. I know it's kind of a lame cliche, but it's about the process. The results will come if you trust your coaching staff, and we have good coaches by and large in this league, and I trust them to make things right over time.
Eric.
Yeah, Coach, talking about just kind of preseason expectations, you look around the league, obviously kind of the household name of the Mountain West on a national level is the San Diego State, right? They just won because they were in the national championship a couple seasons ago, but they haven't quite played up to their preseason expectations. I think Utah State has kind of met some of their expectations, and a team like CSU, right? They're leading the country in 3-point percentage. Mm-hmm. Coach Farouk Manouche is kind of have these guys playing high efficient level basketball, but where would you kind of, I wouldn't say rank these teams in terms of like expectations to maybe exceeding expectations now? If you had to rank this Mountain West season or heading into the conference, where would you kind of rank the power teams right now?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. I don't think anybody would argue that San Diego State has not measured up to what we expected. Look, they had a bad loss to Troy. It happens. It happened to Boise. It happened to CSU. It happens. Nevada. So it's not just that. They haven't looked right, and their schedule's been so sporadic. They haven't played as many games as other teams. They just don't seem like it's been a regular season for San Diego State yet. They have one more opportunity here coming up on Saturday night against Arizona, and if they don't get that one, they're going to be in serious trouble for an at-large, and that's massively disappointing because they were like a clear number one pick to win the conference 2 months ago. So, I mean, their fan base, their program, their expectations are to advance in the tournament, not just sneak in the way they did last year, and they have not played well. Utah State, as you said, kind of what we expected. They had enough guys returning. They seemed to do really well with their guys in the portal. They picked the right guys, and that's a credit to the staff. And CSU is in the same boat as New Mexico. A lot of new faces. Not everybody like the Lobos, but most guys are new, and a new coach on top of it. And they played really well. That one bad loss notwithstanding, but they play a good, fun style of offense. They shoot the ball well. They pass the ball like crazy, and their defense needs a little bit of work, but they've certainly exceeded expectations. And let's not forget about Wyoming too. That's a team that they haven't had the most challenging schedule, but 9-2 for Sundance, and they play. Speaking of fun styles, they run up and down the floor and can score points. They play a ton of guys. They're going to be very difficult to beat up in Laramie this year, and that's an exciting team under Sundance. So I would not sleep on the Cowboys at all.
Yeah, you make an important or an interesting point there with the Wyoming. They beat that Denver team that won at CSU, but they blew them out by like 30 or 35 points. So, I mean, you could like comparing oranges to oranges, apples to apples. But yeah, can you talk a little bit? I don't know how much you've watched the Wyoming, but can you talk about Nas, that their true freshman that's kind of taken the Mountain West by storm, and he's almost gained a little bit of national notoriety and how impactful he's been.
Yeah, people are certainly talking about him now. I mean, look, you would have to say, as good as Jake Hall has been, no slight to Jake Hall, but Meyer would be the freshman of the year at this point. I mean, we're only a third of the way through the season, but he's people are talking about him. He was on fire last night. He's an athletic guy. He can get to the rim and he can shoot the basketball. And Sundance kind of has them playing like free flowing. Maybe he just figured, you know what, we're going to go for it this year. I have 12 guys that can play, kind of similar to Olin, whereas maybe he doesn't feel Sundance that there's a massive drop off from guys like 3 and 4 to guys 10 and 11. And if that's the case, he's going to run them all out there. And then in crunch time, if necessary, you stick with the guys that are playing the best on that specific night. And Meyer, he's just kind of come out of nowhere. It's one of those cases where the recruiting rankings, they just happen to get this one wrong for whatever reason. And Sundance got Meyer, did a great job. He can get to the hole, and he's an exciting player. He's a good athlete, and I think he's certainly their number one option now, despite the fact that he was not on really anybody's radar at the start of the season.
Ed?
Jeff Grammer, like I said, he gave grades across the conference, and he gave Wyoming an A+. Best win was a close loss against Texas Tech, and he said Leland Walker is legit. But there's one team I wanted to ask you about, and it's a late season, late addition to the conference before the season. Some people complain about that. But it's Grand Canyon. They were picked to finish 4th in their net rankings in Kent Palmer, 121.92. Jaden Henley's been good so far, but according to Jeff Grammer, they've been fine, not great, but the defense has been, he said, pretty good. What do you have on Grand Canyon?
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed in what I've seen from them. I think I had them. I never really put a list out of my rankings. I kind of talked about it on the pod a little bit. I would have had Grand Canyon in that 4 or 5 hole, and you can't really say that, well, you knew they would struggle moving up to the Mountain West because they haven't played any Mountain West games yet. So this was completely non-con, the same as they've done the last few years. And I've watched plenty of their games. They just, for whatever reason, the parts offensively are not working. They brought in a ton of transfers, and a lot of them came with some pretty high accolades and were expected to do pretty good things, and it just hasn't worked out. They have a shooter that came in from Gonzaga. He's been a little disappointing. The point guard that they brought in from an HBCU, they were expecting big things from him. He struggled a little bit, and they just haven't been smooth offensively. So, super interesting game for them on Saturday when they head up to Wyoming for the conference opener. That was a game where 2 months ago, when you looked at that, that was like, well, that'll be a tough game for Grand Canyon there, but they would have been the favorite. Now, the roles have completely flipped, and that's a game where Wyoming will certainly be the favorite, and Grand Canyon, who's been slightly disappointing, is going to be the underdog, and we'll see how it plays out. But, yeah, they've left me wanting a little bit more at this point.
We're speaking with Coach. Oh, did you have another one, Dad?
Just one quick one. But back to Grand Canyon, Bryce Drew's he's such a good coach. You figure that somewhere down the line they might figure it out.
Yeah, I mean that's the plan. I mean, look, he's done it. He's done it there for years. He's made the tournament, I think, 3 out of 4 years. He beat St. Mary's in the first round a couple years ago. He obviously was a head coach before at Vanderbilt in the SEC, so he knows what he's doing. It's in his blood, right? His brothers won a national championship. His father was a coach forever. So, I would trust him to get it going. I don't have the experience watching him as much as I do with our coaches to know exactly what he's going to do. So, this is where the rubber meets the road for Drew and the Lopes, because it's not going to get easy when they get into conference play here. They're not used to playing the nightly grind in the Mountain West that they were the last few years. And if they struggle in the non-con, maybe that catches up to them. But we'll see if Drew can earn his stripes here.
We're speaking with Coach Tom Moser, host of the Top of the Mountain West podcast. Coach, as you mentioned, Mountain West play officially kicks off this week. You've got Air Force and San Diego State tomorrow, but the bulk of the start of the conference schedule is on Saturday. 5 games and 2 really big ones. You got Colorado State taking on Utah State and Boise State taking on Nevada. Just kind of your thoughts on the start of Mountain West play and some games that you're keeping your eye on.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Nick. I mean, wire to wire on Saturday. For me, 2 Eastern, but noon for you guys Mountain, right early for that Utah State-Colorado State game. I mean, the 2 teams that may be, if you had a ranking right now, 1 and 2 in the conference, I know New Mexico fans would want them in that mix too, but those 2 teams, it's going to be – I think you might see points in that game. The offense has been the strength for CSU, not necessarily their defense. Calhoun, he's kind of like Olin. He'll switch it up defensively. He was known last year for this matchup zone that kind of got picked apart then towards the end of the season. And this year now, in the last week or 2, he's kind of gotten out of that and gone to a switching man and mixed some other defenses in. Maybe he doesn't think that it's not best suited for his personnel. I'm not sure at this point, but he's trying different things. And what that tells me is not that he's really experimenting, but that he's not completely sold on whatever it is that they're doing at that end. So we might see some points. It's tough to bet against CSU the way they shoot the ball, but with the game being in Logan at the Spectrum, I know students aren't there, but it's going to be a sellout. That's going to be a tough game for CSU to get on the road. As far as the other one, look, as you guys well know, it's difficult to win on the road in conference play, especially in this conference. So Boise riding high, right? They beat Butler, they beat St. Mary's, and now they got to go on the road and play Nevada. And so, it's a toss-up game. As good as Boise's look lately, Alford's won hundreds of games. You guys know Alford as well as anybody. He knows what he's doing. This will not be an easy game for Boise to go down there and get, even though they're playing really good. And that's the problem with having to go on the road in conference play. So flip a coin in that one. And, I mean, whoever executes better is going to win. But I don't – at this point, I have no idea what's going to happen in that late game.
Hey, Coach, personnel-wise, there's a lot of new faces in the league this year. 2 are going to go head-to-head on Saturday in that CSU-Utah State game. And Pasquarelli, he was the transfer from Marist on the CSU Rams. He's a lethal three-point shooter. He's been having a really good season this far. And then you go on the flip side at Utah State. MJ Collins has added a different element to that Utah State offense. He's more of a slasher, but he's got an outside game feel to him. Talk about those 2 guys and kind of how they've been able to elevate their 2 teams this year.
Yeah, I think if you had to pick it right now, I know it's so early and it's pointless to even bring up, but Collins might be the player of the year right now in the conference. He can score at all three levels, and when he gets hot, man, like he was in that MTE game, I think it was against Davidson, he put like 40 plus on the board. It was just like he was unconscious. So like he can fill it. He's smooth. He's got good body control. He can shoot a pull-up off the dribble. He's got a lot of skills to his game. As far as Pasquarelli's concerned, it's been a long time since I've seen a guy. I'm not saying he's Steph Curry or even Steph Curry light, but the way that he throws shots up, they're like trick shots. They're like horse shots. He doesn't need more than a split second to create some space and fire a shot up. And he's made a ridiculous percentage of his shots. I have no idea how CSU was able to land him and how some of the teams in the Big East or on the East Coast didn't notice a guy right underneath their noses from Marist that can shoot the ball like that. Because, man, is it like when he misses, you're surprised because, like, he's got such a good stroke and it's right there all the time. He went through one stretch where he made 16 out of 18 from three. I mean, nobody does that. So, like, you can't leave the guy open, and that just adds another element to your offense then, no matter who you are.
I don't know, Coach, from how much you've been able to watch, but we haven't talked too much about Nevada. Obviously, we have ties with Coach Steve Alford and what he's been able to do there. But can you talk a little bit about the Wolfpack and two newcomers on their team, and Corey Camper and Tayshawn Comer? Both of those guys are averaging more than 15 points per game, and I kind of feel Nevada might be a little bit of a sleeper in the Mountain West this year. I don't know. What's your take?
So Camper's injured right now. He hasn't played the last two games. I think it's 2 games. He didn't play last week. They won at Washington State, and then they hung on to beat Duquesne on Saturday. He didn't play in either of those games, and so that's a guy that they need. On the flip side, just like New Mexico, just like some of the other teams, Alford's got a lot of guys that he can use, and he doesn't mind going deeper into the bench. The one thing that I've worried about, and again, a name that you guys might remember from last year, is their point guard, Tyler Rollison. He was one of the few returners on that roster, and Alford kind of sacked him to start the year. I don't know if it was an energy thing, an effort thing, a production thing, whatever it was. And now with Camper out, he kind of went to Rollison at the end of the game on Saturday night against Duquesne. And I don't really think he was bad, but I just get the feeling that Alford doesn't really trust him or want to use him. But as long as Camper's out, he feels like he has to, because the alternative is playing a freshman at the point guard position. He's got 3 good freshmen, which is rare in this conference. One's a point guard, 2 are big guys. One are actually getting run because they have another big guy hurt, Armo trading. So Alford's got a lot of guys that he can use. As you mentioned, Comer, those guys are like mid-range merchants. They live in the mid-range. They're not a super shooting team from behind the arc. They do what Alford likes to do and get to the foul line. They're going to be in games. I don't know how high their ceiling is, but their floor is pretty high too. Because they won't bottom out like last year, I don't think. But I don't know if they can reach the top echelon. So some intrigue still there with the Pack.
Ed.
Coach, one team we didn't ask about, and they're coming in here on Saturday to play the Lobos, are San Jose State. Kobe Garland's averaging 18.9 points per game. They almost beat Stanford. What do you got on the Spartans?
Yeah, I mean, look, you guys know Miles. He knows how to coach. He knows how to coach an underdog and get the most out of his guys and hang around when he's outmanned, which he will be on Saturday. They're a player or two short, and it doesn't mean that they can't compete, and it doesn't mean that you guys remember last year they beat the Lobos in San Jose, and they took them to the wire in the pit. So nothing would surprise me if this is a 5-point game at the under 4 in the second half. But I just think that they have. You mentioned it, Ed. Garland's a good scorer. He came in as a highly touted guy. They have a couple other pieces. They just don't have enough. Like we've talked about some of these other teams that can go deeper into the bench, and you need to do that in college because the guys are playing too hard. It doesn't matter how many timeouts there are; you just can't play that many minutes. And he's just a guy or two short. But I mean, look, it's Miles, so I wouldn't put anything past the guy because he knows how to get the most out of his squad.
Coach,
Nick.
bringing it back full circle, looking at the Lobos conference schedule, their first 5 games, as you mentioned, they start with San Jose State on Saturday. Then they got 10 days off. They go to Boise. Then they've got Wyoming. Then they're at Colorado State. And then they're at Air Force. So 3 of the first 5 games for the Lobos against 3 of the top 5 teams in the Mountain West. What are the realistic expectations for UNM in their first 5 games of the conference schedule?
Well, I mean, look, ideally, you want to protect your home court. Now, do you expect? Well, I mean, maybe some of the fans do, but is it realistic to go 10-0 at the Pit? Probably not. Okay, but you really need to win your home games, and it's tough to say we're going to win this one, lose this one, win this one, lose this one. But your goal, if you're looking at it, is we got to win our home games. So if that means 8-2 or even 9-1 at home, that's what you got to do. So maybe you just go baseline 8-2 at home. And then what you have to do is you have to beat the bottom half on the road, and you have to try and steal a road game against a top half team. That would be like my baseline expectation there. Now, who that comes against, it's tough to say because sometimes you might look at it a month in advance and say, well, we should win at X, but then 3 weeks later, like they're playing great and you're not playing so well and you end up losing at X. And then, a game pops up later on down the road that you didn't think you had a shot at, but they have 2 guys out and you're coming in riding high and you win that game. So, that stuff happens in football all the time where people kind of forecast out what games you're going to win and lose, and it never goes to script like that. And so, look, what do you want to do in those first 5 games? You don't want to go under 500. So you want to go 3-2, and if you go 4-1, like that's fantastic.
Eric.
We are talking with Coach Tom Moser, Top of the Mountain podcast, and one of the newest additions to the BJ Rains Bronco Nation news on another night in the Mountain West. Coach, I'm going to ask you one more question. We appreciate your time tonight, but this one's more of a bold prediction in your mind. How many bids did the Mountain West get come March?
Yeah, good question. I'll go out on a limb now and say we're going to get 3. I think we have enough potential teams here now, 4 teams in the mix, and that doesn't even include San Diego State. Or, I hate to say it doesn't include Wyoming. The problem for those teams are they don't have any good wins right now. San Diego State, again, has their opportunity on Saturday. Wyoming will have them in the conference. Their strength of schedule is poor, and the committee can sometimes hold that against them. And I don't know, as good as the effort was at Texas Tech, I don't know if the committee's going to say, well, that was a close loss, and so what are they going to do with that one? So I think between the 4 teams we have at the top, we need to avoid the losses to the bottom 2 or 3 teams in the conference here once we get going. But if we can do that, I really think we have a pretty good shot at getting 3 bids, which would be fantastic after the way we started the season.
I think Mountain West fans would be satisfied with that. And I lied. I got one more question for you. So just based off of your overall analysis of the non-con, what you've seen out of teams, right? There's been some really strong wins out there on the road, UNM with VCU, Boise State at Butler, and then Boise State against who did they just
St. Mary's. St. Mary's.
St. Mary's. There you go. Out of all the teams that you've seen play well this year, who has the highest ceiling?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think the default answer would be San Diego State, and that's why they were picked first. But I haven't seen it out of them yet to say that it's them. So, I would scratch them until they show me they can do it. Now, if they lose by 3 on Saturday in Phoenix against the Wildcats, who are number 1 in the country in the AP poll, then that would change my mind. So, I need to see it from them. Beyond that, I think the answer, to be honest, I think the answer is CSU, and that's just because of the way they shoot the basketball. You guys know how the game is anymore. Nothing changes the game like the three-point shot, right? And some of those great Lobo teams under Patino, they were routinely getting outscored by huge numbers from behind the line, right? Got when House and Mashburn and Dent, those guys weren't great three-point shooters, right? And as talented as that team was, they routinely got outscored by double figures from the three-point line. If that wasn't a thing, they would have been a Sweet 16 team, okay? So the three-point shot has completely changed basketball, and the way that CSU shoots the three, I mean, they could go out there and do what San Diego State did and upset a 1 or 2 seed in the second round because they make 60% of their threes the way they did one of their games in the Battle for Atlantis. So they got to get there first. They have a bad loss. They need to overcome that. They need to do well in conference play. So my answer would be CSU, and then right underneath them, I would say Utah State and Boise, I think.
Got it. Coach, we appreciate you coming on last minute. We are right up at 45 minutes for you jumping on. I know it's late on the East Coast with where you're at, but why don't you go ahead and tell our viewers, listeners, because we will turn this into an audio podcast tomorrow morning, but where can they find you and what can they expect from your guys's, or where can they find you in the show starting tomorrow night?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Eric. So I'm on the socials at Coach Moser, at Coach MOSSER if you don't already follow. As for the show, right, Eric had mentioned it. We talked about it before. Another Night in the Mountain West is going to debut tomorrow night on BJ's Bronco Nation News Network. So the YouTube link is in my bio on Twitter. Also, we will tweet it out tomorrow. We'll probably tweet and retweet it. And then, of course, when the game ends, I'll put out another message about it that we're coming on live, BJ and I, tomorrow night. Sometimes it'll be just me. We're going to have coaches on. We're going to have players on. We're going to get a lot of different things going on there every night that there is action in the Mountain West. So look out for that stuff. Listen to the pod, Top of the Mountain West. Follow me on Twitter. Engage, comment, feedback, all that good stuff, because that's what we're here for. We love it.
Yeah, well, the best time of the year is starting now. So Mountain West finally tips off. We're all excited for it. But, Coach, appreciate your time. For those watching, we will take a quick commercial break, let Coach Moser go, and Ed, Nick, and I will return, and we'll kind of break down the FGCU win with UNM. So you are watching the Pit Press Live.
Take care, guys.
Time is running out. This is the final drive of 2025 at Capital Ford. It's your last shot of the year to grab massive dealer discounts, year-end factory incentives, and aggressive trade-in offers. Like a new 25 Ford Explorer with 0% APR for 60 months, or 0% APR for 60 months plus no payments for 90 days on a new 25 Ford F-150. So hurry for these exceptional end-of-year offers during the final drive of 2025 at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Welcome back to the Pit Press Live. I am Eric Moulton, again joined by Ed Nunez, Nick Nunez. We were just joined by Coach Tom Moser. Nick, I want to start off with you, get your overall thoughts on Coach Tom Moser's thoughts on the Mountain West play. I know you've spent a lot of time covering Lobo basketball specifically, but you've also paid close attention to what's happening around the league. So what did you have to think about Tom's thoughts?
Really appreciated Coach Moser coming on with us, Eric. You know, I mean, like you mentioned, man, he covers Mountain West basketball from the East Coast. So a lot of the time he's breaking down these games and engaging with people on X at like 2:30 in the morning. So for him to be gracious enough to join us, I really liked his takes and some of his insight on the Mountain West. You know, I think there's definitely a lot of surprises in the Mountain West Conference, looking at the preseason polls and the way that they shook out. You know, one team we didn't talk about a ton. I mean, we did mention Boise State a little bit, but I think they get a lot of flack from that first game that they lost against Hawaii Pacific. And if anything, the Broncos have been trending upward. And so, you know, I appreciated his insight on Boise State. But just overall, Eric, you know, Coach Moser has been doing this for 3 years now on Top of the Mountain West. You can find his podcast on Spotify. And really looking forward to his coverage on Another Night in the Mountain West, man. That's a true gem. To have him on every game night, breaking down games, engaging with fans, I would encourage people to go check it out. Go to Coach Moser's X page at Coach Moser and find the link in his bio and check out the first show debuts tomorrow after the Air Force and San Diego State game.
We're going to keep it right here with you, Nick, because I know that you were on vacation recently, and you just got caught up. You watched the FGCU CU game recently, so just kind of wanted your overall analysis breakdown. Before we jumped on the live stream earlier, you had mentioned that Greg Archuletta's article on our site kind of hit it spot on. They just came out real sluggish and finally turned it on late in that game. But wanted your overall impression of the game and kind of what stood out to you the most.
Yeah, like you said, ugly start. UNM goes down 9-0. They didn't score their first field goal until the 15:25 mark in the first half. It was a turnaround jumper for Dayton Albury. They shot 34 threes in this game, Eric, and I know Lobo fans have been, irked by the amount of three-point attempts that they've had at various times throughout the season. Think back at the Nebraska game, 44 three-point field goal attempts. New Mexico Highlands against the D2, they set a school record for 50. But I thought they got a little trigger happy from the three-point line. Eric Olin said in the post-game press conference that he likes those shots from Antonio Chol and Jake Hall. Jake Hall did not have a good shooting night. He was 2 for 10 from beyond the arc. Chol was a little better, 3 for 8, but saw 2 go down late for his first 6 shots from beyond the arc. He was 1 for 6. I didn't think they played terrible defense out the gate. FGCU, they hit 5 threes early in the first half. One of those was in transition. UNM just didn't have good transition defense. Another one of those was on an offensive rebound, which has been a problem for this team. But at the end of the day, Eric, my overall impressions, they got the job done, man. They had a 16-point win at home against a team that they should beat. Was it pretty? No, it was ugly. And most people kind of left that game with a bad taste in their mouth. But they got the job done. They're 9-2 in non-conference play, and they got to get things going against San Jose State. So overall, Eric, a win is a win, and we'll take it.
Yep, I agree with you, and I think we do got to watch out for those three-point shot attempts. I talked about it on the podcast that I released Sunday afternoon. I also promoted it yesterday, but the mark for me was 28. This was the third game this season that the Lobos had attempted more than 28 three-point shots in a game, and against FGCU, that was the only one they won. The other 2 games where they shot more than 28 threes was against Nebraska and against New Mexico State, and both those games they just did not play well. So I think he's got a solid point. I think you touched on it well. I think we start to see them regress from that a little bit. But Ed, I'm going to pass it over to you. What was your impression with the Lobo win over Florida Gulf Coast?
Well, Nick and I got to watch it. Together, and it was, they didn't start well. It was not like my son said. It was an ugly start. But I thought they overcame an injury to Bouillon at the end of the first half of the hamstring. They don't know how bad that is. Injury to Chris Howell. So JT Rock had to come in and get the and then they had to dust out Vicentic. They hadn't Milos Vicentic hadn't played much, and they put him in there. He came in and made some free throws. He contributed when he needed to, and I think JT Rock is understanding more and more how to play the big man position, posting up, getting rebounds, feeling more confident in playing in the paint. So, but I was telling my son, GCU didn't put any pressure on New Mexico in the second half. They're jacking a lot of threes. They didn't try any attacking the rim, pressing. I thought New Mexico had played really well in the second half. And like Greg Archuleta wrote for Nick, Greg covered the game. I thought he did a great job in writing the article. He called it a trap game. New Mexico's coming off a high of a big win against VCU, and it's a team that they probably felt they're going to win the game easily, and they did. There was we don't know the other thing is the injuries with Bouillon and Howell. We don't know how bad they are. And then Patton missed the game. Kevin Patton missed the game with a personal reason. So we hope that he'll be back on the bench soon. But I thought then the lob play to net, one of the top plays of I think it made the ESPN highlights. So more good things than bad. But I think in what Coach Moser said, and we all said it too. Where Coach Olin and the Lobos are now, did we expect this? It took a while to learn the system. They're still learning. Coach Olin said in the paper yesterday or today, they can still get better. There's a lot of work to do. But 9-2 with coming off a big win on the road against VCU and then Santa Clara. The conference, I think, is open. I think that New Mexico has a chance. They were picked 5th. But I think one of the things we didn't talk about, the last year for Boise State, for Colorado State, for Utah State, San Diego State. They won't be around next year. Fresno State. So got to enjoy the last year of this conference.
I'm going to pose this next question to both you guys, and it's more of a general question because I don't know if it's a moot point at this point to continue talking about FGCU. I think we can kind of all agree and move on from it. They just came out flat. Really hard game to get up for, right? It's like a trap game right before conference season tips off. But looking ahead to in-conference play, they start out with San Jose State on Saturday. But what you asked the question, Ed, to Coach Moser, and I'm going to kind of pose the same question to you guys, but what do you need to see out of this Lobo squad? Where do you see the most room for improvement? What do they have to limit in terms of mistakes to continue to evolve into a better team? I'm going to play this quote from Coach Eric Olin that I got from the game prior to FGCU, and I just want to hear you guys' take on that and how possibly that could kind of help this team moving forward.
No, I mean, we have some things that we're not doing well. We talked about the rebounding. Like, our last 3 Division I games, we're giving up over 40% defensive rebound rate. Like, that's not winning basketball. We've had good results in spite of that, but if we don't correct it, we're not going to continue to have the results that we want. So I don't think we've taken care of the ball the way we need to. So there's some things that we were doing well early, or at least at times, and maybe we haven't done as well in the last few, but we've made progress in other areas, and maybe that covers some things up. So that's kind of why we always just talk about just kind of the general approach to improving all the time, because it's a constant process. And you have a really good week, you beat 2 really good teams, we played really well. Like, I don't want to take away from those performances, because the guys were fantastic in those games, but we don't have it all figured out. You know what I mean? Like, we're one possession games that, like, we were in, like, they can go either way, right? Like, a couple bounces here and there, and that game goes the other way, and we feel totally differently about ourselves as a team, and so, like, the reality is always somewhere in between how you feel when you win and you lose, and I think we have to, you have to have enough confidence to stick to the plan when things aren't going well, and you have to have enough humility when they are to, evaluate what you're not actually doing well, and be, and still be hungry to get better and not feel like you've made it. Like, so that's our thing, is just continuing to focus on the same stuff regardless of the results, so that we just keep getting better.
Nick, you've been in a lot of locker rooms in your day. You were a player, you were a coach. What do you think Coach Olin's message to the guys is now, right? They're sitting at 9-2 and their record heading into conference play, but there's still a lot of things and just what he was explaining there that they're not satisfied with. Break that down for me, man. What do your thoughts go with that on Coach Olin's comment?
Yeah, man, for sure. I think there's 3 areas that UNM can really improve on, and we've talked about 2 of them already: shot selection, rebounding, taking care of the basketball. I think there's 3 areas on both sides of the ball that they can improve on. We've talked about the shot selection kind of ad nauseum, Eric. When they chuck up threes, I don't think they're at their best on the offensive end. And we've seen teams, and we've gotten some really good comments from Steve Singletary on our show here tonight. I think you're going to see teams start to zone them a little bit more. Alabama State did that the game before Thanksgiving. They threw a zone at UNM. I didn't think they looked that great. New Mexico Highlands, I know that was a blowout loss. No one's really going to take anything away from that. But in the first half, New Mexico Highlands threw a zone at UNM. They didn't look great on a couple possessions. And then FGCU, they changed up defenses throughout both the first and the second half. They ran out of gas in the second half. But, I think UNM is still kind of figuring itself out on the offensive end when it plays against a zone. They have a tendency to kind of shoot the first 3 that they get, whether it's Jake Hall or Antonio Chol. And look, Coach Olin's going to have those guys back. He's going to say, we want them shooting threes if they're open. And I think that's fine. But I think this team is better when they go inside out. They get paint touches with Dayton Albury, get the ball inside Tomislav Buljan. And against the zone, it's kind of hard to do that, right? Because the spacing is just a little different considering where teams are playing on the defensive side of the ball. So I think their shot selection, particularly against the zone, needs to get better. Rebounding, you heard Coach Olin talk a lot about that in that clip. Against New Mexico State on the road, they give up a ton of offensive rebounds late in the second half. Dayton Albury fouls out late in the game because UNM gave up so many offensive rebounds. Against VCU, they gave up a ton of offensive rebounds in the first half. And against Santa Clara, I think they gave up, I want to say maybe 17, 18 offensive rebounds and around 20 second chance points. Santa Clara just shot so poorly that we got enough defensive rebounds and enough transition opportunities that we made up for it. But they got to figure out how to rebound the basketball. And we talked about this with Coach Moser. When you switch and you play a matchup zone, you're inherently going to have mismatches when the shot goes up. You're going to have 5'10" Uriah Tenet guarding some 6'7" shooting forward, and he's going to have to rebound. And you saw him against FGCU. He picked up a rebounding foul for giving somebody a chicken wing because he's trying to box out, and give him credit. But I think that's going to happen, Eric. And last year with UC San Diego, Eric Olin's teams were so good at stealing the basketball. They were, top 5 in the country in turnover rate, the Ken Pom statistic. That they kind of made up for their inability to rebound the basketball. UNM is still good at turning teams over. I don't have their Ken Pom profile up in front of me right now, but they're not as good as UC San Diego was last year, and so they're giving up some offensive rebounds. And then turnovers, UNM had, I think, 7 turnovers in the first half against FGCU, 6 steals for FGCU in the first half, some live ball turnovers that turned into transition points. I think they got to get better at taking care of the basketball. So those are the 3 areas that I think UNM can really improve on as we get into conference play.
Impressive stuff, Nick. Really broke that down really well. Ed, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think Coach Olin made that point at the press conference last week about the rebounding. And, that's obviously something that my son touched on. That's got to improve. I think for me, I would like to address some individual players that I think we mentioned Antonio Chol. He came on with 2 late threes, but it's the rebounding, right? He's capable of 5 to 7 rebounds or 8 rebounds a game. I think he's got to come through with that, attack the rim, like Coach Moser said. Attack the rim. I don't know if you remember earlier in the year, he attacked and a rack attack, 2 great dunks. I think he's capable of slashing. I think they can get more out of him. I think Nick's point about Nick and I were watching Sunday, GCU's zone defense was of no importance, man. They didn't move. They didn't affect any movement or change. UNM attacked that one at will. They used Jake Hall on the elbow there to pass or shoot. I thought they attacked the zone well, but I think they are going to face more zone defenses, so they're going to have to figure it out. Conference games, as we all know, are different. Conference games are way different, man, than when you have to play a team twice in conference than playing a VCU or Santa Clara or a GCU on one night. So I think they've got room for improvement. Nick mentioned the rebounding, the zone defense. I think the JT Rock is coming on at a good time. Their rotation, who are they going to play when it comes conference time? Patton wasn't there. Kevin Patton wasn't there on Saturday because he missed the game due to personal reasons. Is he going to be that guy off the bench? He was starting to play well. Javis Miller has been totally kind of forgotten about. He's not in the rotation anymore. Coach Jeff Grammer asked Coach Olin about that. He says, "Hey, it's just the way we're rolling right now." He's not playing. So I think there's a lot of questions coming into the conference as far as some of the things we mentioned. But I don't want to be remiss in saying that I don't know that we would have thought they'd be 9-2 with coming off 2 big wins. Home win here against Santa Clara, and then a big one on the road against VCU. And this is, remember, a team with new players, new coaches, new system, new everything. So I got to say I'm pretty impressed with where they're at right now. And I think once conference play, I'm excited for conference play, man. I think they'll be ready to play against San Jose State. And hopefully those 2 players, Bouillon and Howell, are ready to play on Saturday. They're going to need them.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to mention is this team has depth. And they've got some new emerging depth in a guy like JT Rock. And here's a clip from the press conference earlier, wasn't this week, mid last week. Ed, you were the one that asked Coach Olin about the question. Here's Coach Olin on JT Rock.
Coach, you mentioned the physicality and the rebounds, and sometimes you need to improve in that area. But does the continued development of JT Rock coming off the bench, he's plus 18 off of the bench and giving you some good minutes. He's still developing. He's 7'1", man. does that his continued development give you hope that in late, that you're going to be able to get more rebounds and not have the minus things you did on the offensive boards? Does his continued development give you hope for that?
Yeah, I think there's hope for that. But and JT's playing great basketball, but JT's also someone who can do a better job on the defensive glass, right? Like, I mean, it's everybody across the board. I think JT's impacting the offensive glass a little more than he is the defensive glass right now. But he is doing a good job. We are playing really well when he's on the floor, so we feel good about his, kind of direction. But no one player is going to sort of solve our issues in that area. That has to be a collective improvement.
Yeah, when you hear that, Ed, JT Rock has been an emergent second half of non-conference play. Coming into conference play, key guys and teams are going to key on a guy like Bouillon. You're talking about being able to bring a double team or really boxing him out and not letting him be a force on the boards and being more physical and getting him into foul trouble. The importance of a guy like JT Rock and him being able to be impactful on a game. Talk about what his kind of revolution, his ability to see more minutes does for a team like this heading into conference play.
I was impressed with what a sequence against VCU when he made a nice shot, then he followed that up with a block, and that's the confidence he's getting inside and playing in the paint. I think he hit a 3-pointer against VCU, if I'm right. I think he hit a 3-pointer as well. And Kenny goes crazy if he shoots a lot of threes. Kenny's like, get your butt in the paint, but he can't stretch. That helps him too. So I think that development there. And Jeff Grammer did ask Coach Olin, do you see a time where they're going to play Bouillon and JT Rock together? And he said, maybe not now, maybe later down the season. So that might help, having and then you got to worry about transition defense if they're going to be able to get back in time, things like that. But I think that's where Nick's point about team rebounding comes in too, and Coach Olin's point. Yes, JT Rock, to me, Eric, when you're 7-1, I've never been 7-1, but I would be wanting every rebound. Got to get hungry, right, and want to dominate. And he's played really well, and confidence is growing every week. So I think that's going to help. But I think again the team rebounding part that Coach Moser mentioned, that's got to come into play too. The Luke Hops, the Chris Howells, the team rebounding that'll help you. And rebounding is about timing. It's about hustle, knowing where the shot's going to come off, things like that. So I think UNM has improved a little bit, but they're lucky they didn't get hurt against Santa Clara or VCU. VCU had a lot of open shots, man. They just didn't make them. It was a game of inches and bounces. UNM got the final bounce there. So I think that will help. JT Rock will help. And we don't know how long. Hopefully Bouillon is in the lineup on Saturday. We're not even really sure yet. So I think that the continued development of JT Rock, remember, he didn't play last year very much. I think that's only going to help UNM inside and, get to where they want to be as far as, rebounding offensively and defensive. That's really important.
Yeah, well, I had a lot of fun with you guys tonight. We're coming up on an hour and 10 minutes with our Mountain West preview show with Coach Tom Moser. Really appreciate him jumping on last minute, but you guys, welcome back to New Mexico after a nice weekend in Durango at the Polar Express. Want to give a special shout out to our sponsors in Zach Brand at Capital Ford, Quick Lane, Affordable Solar and Hydro Bar. We appreciate the support. We appreciate you guys, the viewers, the listeners, people that tune in and chime in on the comments. We like to show your stuff on screen, so continue to do so. And Nick, Ed, any final thoughts before we cut loose?
No, Eric, it's good to be back. I would encourage anybody who's watching to listen to the podcast you put together over the weekend. That would be UNM's non-con summary and Mountain West Conference scorecard. Eric does a really good job of diving into the analytics with Evan Maya, Ken Palm, some of the other advanced analytics, breaking down some individual players for UNM, some specific games. So I would encourage people to get on Spotify and listen to that. Once again, that's UNM's non-con summary and Mountain West scorecard that was put on Sunday. So that's all I got, Eric.
Appreciate that. Ed, any final thoughts?
No, just looking forward to, again, this weekend's game. against San Jose. I'll be actually, I got to say one thing, and I've been telling my son this: Western New Mexico is 7-2. Men's team is 7-2, and it's been a while since they've been very good at all. So that's the first time home game that they're going to play this weekend. They've been on the road, man. So I'm kind of looking forward to watching them. They play the Dallas DBU on Saturday, and DBU's 0-9, but they gave West Texas A&M, who's undefeated, all they could handle. So I'm looking forward to that. But just so everybody knows, my son will host Kenny Thomas Live again on Saturday. Another great opportunity for Nick, and I'm looking forward to watching the game because the game at Western will end early enough that I can watch the Lobos on the Mountain West and then listen to Nick and with Kenny on Kenny Thomas Live afterward, and then maybe even call in if I get a chance, man. So those of you that listen to Kenny Thomas Live, it'll be my son hosting on Saturday. I'm really excited for him.
Appreciate that, Dad. Eric, I just wanted to address this one comment. We appreciate you, the chosen guy, 505. Love the shows, guys. Can we maybe get an actual set schedule, or will that ever happen? I mean, I think that's a fair question, Eric. You know, now that we're coming up on conference play, we'll try to be a little bit more consistent in the times that we get on, maybe once or twice a week. Some of it will depend on the days that the Lobos play, right? I mean, but, you know, I think that's fair, and I think that's something that we can figure out as time goes on.
Yeah,
one last thing
to
to add to that, Eric, if I could, we're hoping to get something on Thursday for the football, the Rate Bowl. Hopefully, we'll get a player on and get talk about the Rate Bowl coming up in Phoenix. Maybe we can get a player on Thursday.
Sounds good to me. We'll keep you guys posted once we get a guest available. But again, thanks for tuning into the Pit Press Live. For Eric Moulton, Ed Nunez, and Nick Nunez, this is the Pit Press Live.